What do you do when the most important day of your life turns into the nightmare you never saw coming? I had dreamed of this moment for years. The perfect wedding, the perfect life ahead. The ballroom sparkled with light. The guests were smiling, and I was marrying the man I thought I'd spend forever with. But as I looked at Matt, standing beside me, his smile seemed distant, like a stranger wearing his face. A flicker of doubt crossed my mind, but I pushed it away, telling myself it was just wedding jitters. Little did I know, my life was about to unravel in the most unexpected way, and nothing would ever be the same again. Laughter and the clinking of glasses filled the air in the grand ballroom of the Crystal Lake Hotel. I stood near the dance floor in my white lace dress, still processing the reality of the day. Everything appeared flawless. The soft, twinkling fairy lights, pink and white roses on every table, and the beaming faces of our friends and family. "Amy, you look absolutely stunning," my best friend Jill said, pulling me into a hug, careful not to wrinkle my dress. "I still can't believe my best friend is married." I smiled at her, but something felt off. Matt, my husband of just 3 hours, had been acting strangely since the ceremony. He kept checking his phone, whispering to his brother in the corner, and every time I caught his eye, he quickly looked away. "Everything okay?" Jill must have noticed my growing concern. I forced another smile. "Yeah, just wedding day jitters, I guess." The DJ called for our first dance. Matt appeared by my side, taking my hand. His palm was sweaty, and I could feel him trembling slightly as we swayed to our song, Perfect by Ed Sheeran. I tried to meet his gaze. "Matt, is something wrong?" I whispered. "You seem different." "Everything's fine," he snapped, then immediately softened his tone. "Just a lot going on today." The song ended, and Matt practically ran to the bar. I watched him down a glass of whiskey in one gulp. This wasn't like him. He usually preferred beer and never drank hard liquor. My stomach twisted. That's when I noticed his brother Steve talking rapidly on the phone near the exit, gesturing wildly. Matt joined him, and their faces turned pale as they looked at something on Steve's phone. I started to walk toward them, but then my mother-in-law, Mary, intercepted me. "Amy, darling, shouldn't you be mingling with the guests?" Her smile was forced, her eyes darting nervously between me and Matt. "I need to speak with Matt for a moment," I said, trying to move around her. "He's busy with some wedding details," she said, gripping my arm a little too firmly. "Come, let's get you a drink." But I was done being kept in the dark. Something was wrong, and I was tired of being blocked from my husband. I pulled away from Mary and walked straight toward Matt and Steve. As I got closer, I overheard fragments of their conversation. "We have to tell her," Steve was saying, urgency in his voice. "There's no way to hide it anymore." "Tell me what?" I asked, my voice cutting through the tension, making both of them jump. Matt spun around, his face a mixture of panic and something else, shame. He was gripping another glass of whiskey, his knuckles white. Steve quickly pocketed his phone, avoiding my gaze. "Matt, what's going on?" I demanded, my heart racing in my chest. "Amy," Matt's voice cracked. "I can explain." The knot in my stomach tightened. 20 feet away, the dance floor was full of happy guests. The DJ was playing Sweet Caroline, and my bridesmaids were taking selfies. But right here, in this bubble of tension, my perfect wedding day was about to shatter. I had no idea that the next words out of Matt's mouth would change everything, or that in less than 5 minutes I'd be wearing his drink instead of my smile. "I lost our house down payment." Matt's words hit me like a physical blow. "I got into some trouble with betting, and I thought I could double it." My mind went blank. The house down payment? We'd been saving for 2 years, every extra shift, every bonus, all towards our dream home. "What do you mean you lost it?" "It's not just that," Steve cut in, looking at his brother. "Matt, tell her everything." Matt took another long drink, his hands shaking. "I borrowed money from some people. Bad people. They're calling it due now." "How much?" My voice was barely a whisper. $50,000. The room started spinning. $50,000? Our savings had been $35,000 for the house, which meant, "Did you take out loans?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Credit cards," he mumbled. "In your name." The music seemed to fade away. In my name? He'd committed fraud, using my identity, my perfect credit score, my financial future gone. And he'd waited until after we were married to tell me. "When?" I demanded, my voice rising. "When did you do this?" "Amy, please keep your voice down." Mary appeared again, smiling nervously at nearby guests. "We can discuss this later." "You knew?" I turned to her, realization dawning. "You knew about this?" Mary's smile tightened. "I was trying to protect my son. We were going to fix this after the wedding." "Fix it?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Fix identity theft? Fix gambling addiction? Fix lying to me until after I signed the marriage certificate? Matt grabbed my arm. "Amy, please, I need you to understand. These guys, they're serious. They came to the house yesterday." "Yesterday?" My voice cracked. "You knew about this threat yesterday and still went through with the wedding?" "I love you," he pleaded. "I didn't want to lose you." "Love?" I pulled away from him. "Love is trust, Matt. Love is respect. This is manipulation." "You're being dramatic," Mary snapped. "Every marriage has its problems. You need to stand by your husband." That's when something in me snapped. All the anger, betrayal, and hurt crystallized into a cold, clear fury. Stand by him while he ruins my life? While he lies to me? While he steals from me? Each question came out louder than the last. People were starting to stare. The DJ had lowered the music. Matt's face was red with embarrassment and alcohol. "You're making a scene," he hissed, raising his glass to his lips. "A scene?" I stepped closer. "You want a scene? How's this for a scene? I want an annulment. This marriage is over." What happened next seemed to play out in slow motion. Matt's face contorted with rage. He raised his glass and threw his whiskey directly in my face. The alcohol stung my eyes, soaked my makeup, and dripped down my white dress. The room went silent. Someone gasped. I stood there, dripping and humiliated, but somehow feeling stronger than ever. "Thank you," I said quietly, wiping my eyes. "Thank you, Matt," I said, looking at him utterly confused. "Yes, thank you for showing me exactly who you are before I wasted any more of my life on you." I turned to the stunned crowd, my mascara running down my cheeks, but my head held high. "I'm sorry, everyone, but the reception is over, at least for me. I've just discovered that my new husband is a gambling addict who committed identity theft and fraud in my name. Oh, and as you can see, he has anger issues." The silence was deafening. Mary was practically purple with rage. Matt stood frozen, empty glass still in his hand. And me? I felt strangely free. "Please enjoy the rest of the food and drinks. Consider it a party celebrating my narrow escape." With that, I walked toward the exit. Jill rushed to my side with my purse and phone. Behind me, I could hear the chaos erupting, but I didn't look back. My wedding day had turned into a nightmare, but tomorrow will be the first day of my new life. The drive home was a blur. Jill insisted on coming with me, which was good because my hands wouldn't stop shaking. My wedding dress was still damp and reeking of whiskey. Mascara tracks had dried on my cheeks, and my carefully styled hair had fallen flat. "I can't believe I didn't see it," I said, staring out the passenger window. "All the signs were there." "Don't do that to yourself," Jill replied, keeping her eyes on the road. "Master manipulators are good at hiding things. That's what they do." My phone kept buzzing. Messages from guests, missed calls from Matt and his family, and social media notifications flooding in. I turned it off. I couldn't deal with any of that right now. When we reached my apartment, the one I'd kept just for myself, despite Mary's protests, Jill helped me out of my ruined wedding dress. Standing there in just my slip, I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. "You know what's crazy?" I said, wiping away the last traces of makeup. "I feel more relieved than sad." Jill sat on the edge of my bathtub. "That's because you're stronger than you think. Most people wouldn't have walked out like that. They would have made excuses, hidden it. But not you." I changed into sweatpants and an old t-shirt and curled up on my couch with a cup of tea. Jill ordered pizza, and we sat together in silence, letting everything sink in. Around midnight, my curiosity got the better of me, and I turned my phone back on. 47 missed calls, 156 text messages, 23 voicemails, and 312 social media notifications. "Someone recorded it," Jill said, holding up her phone. There it was, my wedding day meltdown, now going viral on TikTok. The comments were surprisingly supportive. "Queen energy right there." She handled that with so much grace. "This is what standing up for yourself looks like." I couldn't help but laugh. It was either that or cry. That night, sleep was nearly impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Matt's face as he threw the drink, saw Mary's smug expression, and heard Steve's warnings too late. The weight of the financial mess ahead kept pressing down on me. Jill stayed over, crashing on my couch. Around 3 a.m., I heard her talking quietly on the phone, probably to her boyfriend Mark, who's a lawyer. I made a mental note to call him in the morning. As the first light of dawn crept in, I finally dozed off, only to be startled awake by my phone ringing at 7 a.m. I almost declined it, but the number wasn't Matt's or anyone I recognized. "Hello?" My voice was rough from crying and lack of sleep. "Is this Amy Mitchell?" A man's voice asked, professional, serious. "Yes. Who is this?" "My name is Detective James Torres with the Financial Crimes Unit. We need to talk about your husband, Michael Collins. You might want to sit down for this." I pressed the speaker button so Jill could hear. Something in his tone told me this conversation was going to change everything. "I'm already sitting," I said. And after yesterday, I doubt anything could surprise me. The detective's next words proved me wrong. "Mrs. Mitchell, we've been investigating your husband for the past 8 months. He continued. "He's not just involved in gambling. We believe he's part of a larger money laundering operation." Jill grabbed my hand as I sat there, stunned. "Money laundering?" I repeated. "That's impossible. Matt works at an accounting firm." "Exactly," the detective interrupted. "His position there made it perfect. We've traced over $2 million in suspicious transactions through accounts he's managed." The room started spinning. $2 million? The house down payment suddenly seemed like pocket change. "Yesterday's events at your wedding," Torres continued, "accelerated our timeline. We need your cooperation." I let out a bitter laugh. "Cooperation? I just found out my husband stole my identity. Now you're telling me he's some kind of criminal mastermind?" "Not the mastermind," Torres corrected. "That would be your mother-in-law, Mary Collins." The phone nearly slipped from my hand. Mary? The Stevie woman who'd criticized my choice of wedding flowers and insisted I take Matt's last name? "We have evidence suggesting Mary has been running this operation for years," Torres explained. "Multiple businesses, shell companies, all laundering money for some very dangerous people. Matt was just her latest recruit." Jill spoke up. "That explains why she was so pushy about the wedding happening quickly." "Exactly," Torres agreed. "Once you were married, it would be harder to get you to testify. Plus, they could potentially move money through joint accounts." My head was pounding. The gambling debts were probably real, but also a convenient cover story. Makes him look like a victim rather than a willing participant. I thought about all the times Mary had helped with our wedding planning, insisting on certain vendors, specific accounts for the gift registry, and even our honeymoon location. "The whole wedding was a setup, wasn't it?" I asked, feeling sick. "We believe so," Torres confirmed. "But your public confrontation yesterday complicated their plans significantly." "So what do you need from me?" I asked, running my fingers through my tangled hair. "We need you to play along just for a few days. Act as if you might forgive him. We need to track where the money's going. And my phone beeped with another call. Matt's number. That's him now, I said. Perfect timing, Torres replied. Remember, you're upset but willing to listen. We'll be recording everything. I took a deep breath and switched calls. Amy? Matt's voice was shaky. Baby, please don't hang up. I can explain everything. I caught Jill's eye. She nodded encouragingly. I'm listening, I said, trying to keep my voice even. Can we meet? Please. There's so much you don't understand. Mom has a plan to fix everything. Of course she did. Where? I asked, knowing Detective Torres was probably already tracing this call. The coffee shop on 4th Street, in an hour. Please, Amy. I love you. Those 3 words that used to make my heart flutter now made my skin crawl. 1 hour, I agreed, then hung up. Detective Torres came back on. Perfect. We'll have officers in place. Whatever you do, don't let them know you've talked to us. After ending the call, I sat there in silence for a moment, processing everything. Well, Jill finally said, this is not how I expected your wedding weekend to go. I stood up, heading for the shower. Me neither. But you know what? If I'm going to help take down a money laundering operation, I at least want to look good doing it. I arrived at the coffee shop exactly on time, wearing jeans and a simple black sweater, no trace of the bride I'd been yesterday. Detective Torres's team had fitted me with a tiny microphone hidden under my collar. Jill waited in her car across the street, just in case. Matt was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee. He'd ordered my usual, a vanilla latte with oat milk. The familiar gesture felt like a punch to the gut. Amy. He stood up quickly, dark circles under his eyes. Thank you for coming. I sat down without hugging him. You said you wanted to explain. I do, but first... He glanced around nervously, then slid a folder across the table. Mom put this together. It's a plan to fix everything. I opened the folder, my hands steady despite my racing heart. Inside were documents for new credit cards, bank accounts, and even a passport, all with slightly different versions of my name. What is this? I asked, although I already knew. A fresh start. Matt leaned forward, speaking quietly. We transfer everything to these new accounts. The debts, the loans, they all disappear. We can still have our dream life. By committing more fraud? It's not fraud, it's... He paused, searching for words. It's financial restructuring. Mom does it all the time for her clients. I thought about Detective Torres's words. Mom does it all the time. Of course she did. Tell me the truth, Matt, I said, meeting his eyes. How long have you been helping your mother launder money? He flinched like I'd slapped him. What? No, that's not... His voice trailed off as he saw my expression. The gambling debts are real, he finally said. But the rest, it started small, just helping Mom with some accounts, moving money around. She said it was for tax purposes. And the identity theft? Was that her idea too? Matt had the decency to look ashamed. We needed clean accounts, ones that couldn't be traced back to us. Your credit score was perfect. So you used me, I said, my voice cold as ice. The whole wedding was just a cover, wasn't it? No. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away, disgust rippling through me. I love you, Amy. The wedding was real, but Mom said once we were married, everything would be easier. Legally, you know. Easier. Easier to steal from me, you mean? We can protect you, another voice interjected. I turned to see Mary slipping into the seat next to Matt. Family protects family. Is that what you call this? I waved a hand at the folder in front of me. Protection? That's exactly what it is. She smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. The people Matt owes money to, they're not nice people. But I have connections, ways to make problems disappear. Like the $2 million you made disappear through Matt's accounting firm? Both their faces drained of color. Mary's smile faltered, her eyes narrowing. "Who have you been talking to?" she demanded. I slowly stood up, collecting the folder.
You know what the funny thing is? Yesterday, when Matt threw that drink in my face, I thought that was the worst moment of my life. But now, I realize it was the best thing that could have happened.
"Amy, please!"
Matt started to rise. "Sit down!" Mary hissed, grabbing his arm, her gaze darting around the cafe. "Too late," I said, as Detective Torres and his team emerged from various corners of the cafe.
"The game is over."
Mary's face twisted in fury.
"You stupid girl. You have no idea what you've done." I stood tall as the officers approached, their badges out. "I know exactly what I've done. I've chosen myself." As they handcuffed Matt and Mary, Matt called out one last time. "I did love you." I paused at the door, turning back to him. "No, Matt. You loved what you could use me for. There's a difference." Outside, Jill was waiting with open arms. Through the coffee shop window, I saw Matt and Mary being led away in handcuffs.
"You okay?"
Jill asked. I took a deep breath of fresh air. You know what? For the first time since yesterday, I am. The weeks following the coffee shop arrest felt like living in a thriller movie. Detective Torres kept me updated as the investigation unfolded. The rabbit hole went deeper than anyone imagined. "We've uncovered 12 shell companies," he told me during one of our meetings. Mary was laundering money for 3 different criminal organizations. The wedding venue was a front business. The honeymoon resort, Stevie thing. I sat in his office, looking at photos of my wedding venue. So even our first dance was on dirty money. The good news is, he shuffled some papers. Because you cooperated and were an unknowing victim, all the fraudulent accounts in your name will be cleared. Your credit score should recover within a few months. But it wasn't just the legal aftermath I had to deal with. Every day brought new challenges. Returning the wedding gifts was a nightmare of explanations and awkward conversations. "No, I don't need the toaster." "Yes, I'm sure." "No, we're not working things out." The viral video of the wedding incident spawned dozens of reaction videos, memes, and even a few marriage counselors using it as an example in their TikTok posts. My phone kept buzzing with messages from strangers. "You're so brave, girl. You dodged a bullet. Can I interview you for my podcast?" I declined all interviews, but I did start a private blog to process everything. Writing about my experience became surprisingly therapeutic. 1 month after the arrest, I received a letter from Matt from jail. "Dear Amy, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. The truth is, I was trapped in Mom's web long before I met you. I thought I could protect you from it all. I was wrong. I'm testifying against Mom and her partners. It's the right thing to do, even if it's too late. Matt." I never replied. Some bridges are better left burned. Mary's trial was set for spring. The prosecution had mountains of evidence, including recordings from my wedding and the coffee shop meeting. My testimony wouldn't even be needed. "How are you doing?" Jill asked one evening as we sat on my apartment balcony, sharing a bottle of wine. I thought about it. "You know what's weird? I'm grateful." She looked skeptical. "Think about it. If Matt hadn't thrown that drink, if he hadn't lost control, I might have spent years trapped in their scheme. That moment of violence saved me from something much worse." Jill raised her glass. "To bad men with poor impulse control." I laughed. "To new beginnings." 6 months later, I stood in front of my new apartment building, holding the keys. I'd used the money I'd saved for the honeymoon to make a down payment. It was small, but it was mine. No fraud, no schemes, no lies. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Mary had been sentenced to 15 years. Matt got 5, with the possibility of parole for cooperating. Their entire empire had crumbled, all because of one thrown drink at a wedding. That evening, as I unpacked boxes in my new home, I found my wedding album, still unopened. I thought about throwing it away, but instead, I placed it on my bookshelf. "Why keep it?" Jill had asked when she saw it. "As a reminder," I explained, "that sometimes the worst moments in our lives can be turning points towards something better." I opened my laptop and looked at my blog's latest post. 6 months ago, I thought my life was over when my husband threw a drink in my face at our wedding. Today, I realize it was the beginning. Sometimes life's biggest blessings come disguised as our worst moments. Trust your instincts, stand your ground, and never be afraid to walk away from a bad situation, even if you're wearing a wedding dress when you do it. The post already had thousands of likes and comments, women sharing their own stories of escape, of starting over, of choosing themselves. 1 year after my disastrous wedding, I stood confidently in front of a crowd at a women's empowerment conference. The viral video from my wedding day played on the screen behind me, but this time I didn't flinch or look away. "People often ask me if I regret getting married," I began, scanning the room. "And the answer is no. I regret not recognizing the red flags sooner. But that day, that moment when everything fell apart, was the very moment everything fell into place. The investigation had come to an end, and Mary's empire had completely crumbled, revealing dozens of fraudulent businesses. Matt was still in prison, writing letters I refused to read. My credit score had fully recovered, and the nightmare of identity theft was officially behind me. "The thing about rock bottom," I continued, "is that it shows you exactly who you are. When my husband threw that drink in my face, I had two choices: stay and accept it, or walk away and choose myself. I chose myself, and my blog, which had initially started as a personal outlet, had transformed into a support community for women escaping toxic relationships. Every day I received messages from women sharing their stories, finding strength through mine. "I left him yesterday. Your story gave me courage. I was afraid to start over at 40, but you showed me it's possible. Thank you for showing me what strength looks like." Jill, who sat in the front row with a beaming smile, had been with me through every step of the journey, through legal battles, sleepless nights, and the darkest days when even getting out of bed seemed impossible. Today, she was watching me transform my pain into purpose. "People often ask me what happened to the wedding dress," I said, smiling softly. "I didn't trash it. I didn't burn it. Instead, I donated it to a charity that helps survivors of domestic violence start new lives. Because sometimes the best thing we can do with our pain is use it to help others heal." Life had unfolded in unexpected ways. The dream house I'd saved for became a cozy apartment I loved. The perfect marriage I'd envisioned turned into a powerful journey of self-discovery. The happily ever after I once imagined became something far richer, a story of resilience. Just last week, I received a wedding invitation. I shared it with the audience. "My cousin's getting married, and she asked if it would be uncomfortable for me to attend. I told her I'd be honored. Because a failed wedding didn't break me, it made me stronger." I touched the small key necklace around my neck, a reminder of the apartment I bought on my own, the life I built from scratch. "So here's what I learned from having a drink thrown in my face at my wedding," I said, my voice steady. "Sometimes the most painful moments are doorways. Sometimes public humiliation is public liberation. And sometimes, just sometimes, the worst day of your life becomes the first day of your best life." The audience erupted into applause. I saw tears in some eyes, recognition in others. My story had become more than just a viral video. It had become a beacon of hope. That evening, alone in my apartment, I sat down at my laptop and opened a new page to write one final blog post about my wedding day. The cursor blinked on the blank page and I typed, "Dear future me, today marks 1 year since you walked away from a marriage that began with betrayal and ended with a thrown drink. 1 year since you chose yourself over security, truth over comfort, dignity over appearances. You lost a husband but found yourself. You lost a dream but gained a purpose. You lost a wedding day, but gained a lifetime of wisdom. And to anyone reading this who is standing where I stood 1 year ago, afraid to walk away, afraid to start over, afraid to choose yourself. Remember this: the worst moment of your life can become the moment that saves your life. The end of your story can become the beginning of your legacy, and sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away, even if you're wearing a wedding dress when you do it. Here's to new beginnings, unexpected strength, and the beauty of choosing yourself. Love, Amy. Have you ever had to walk away from something you thought was perfect, only to discover that letting go was the best decision you could have made? How do we find the strength to choose ourselves when the world expects us to stay? Amy's wedding day quickly turned into a nightmare when her new husband, Matt, revealed that he had gambled away their house down payment and committed identity theft. As she confronted him, her perfect day crumbled in front of her, and she was forced to make a painful decision: walk away or stay trapped in a lie. With the support of her best friend Jill, Amy chose herself, leaving the wedding reception and cutting ties with Matt. What followed was a whirlwind of investigations, the exposure of Matt's criminal involvement, and a viral moment of public empowerment. Amy's journey from victim to victor led her to rebuild her life on her own terms, embracing the strength she never knew she had. Now, she's sharing her story with others, empowering women to walk away from toxic relationships and choose their own futures. Amy's experience is a powerful example of reclaiming control in the face of betrayal. At first, she was devastated, humiliated, and overwhelmed by the reality of her marriage unraveling just hours after the wedding. But as the truth came to light, something shifted within her. Rather than succumbing to shame or trying to make excuses for Matt's behavior, she chose to confront the situation head-on. Her decision to walk away wasn't just an act of self-preservation, it was a declaration of self-worth. Amy understood that staying in a toxic relationship would only perpetuate the cycle of manipulation and self-doubt. The public nature of her confrontation, the viral video, and the subsequent investigation were catalysts for her personal growth. By sharing her story, Amy transformed her pain into empowerment, turning what was meant to break her into the foundation of a new, stronger life. This shift from being a victim of circumstances to an active participant in her own healing is what makes Amy's story so powerful. She learned that true strength lies in the ability to choose oneself, even when it means walking away from everything she thought she wanted. Have you ever faced a moment when you had to choose your dignity over comfort? What was that decision like, and how did it change your life? What do you think can the worst moments in our lives really lead to the best things? Have you ever had a moment where you had to let go of something or someone in order to move forward? I'd love to hear your stories. Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more inspiring journeys of self-discovery. Sometimes, choosing yourself is the bravest thing you can do.
The envelope felt heavier than it should have. No return address, just my name and the salon's address printed in clean, precise letters. I probably wouldn't have opened it right away if I hadn't noticed the slight bulge in the middle, like something more than just paper was inside. My name is Evie, and that manila envelope changed everything. I was alone in my salon after hours, doing the books like I always did on Tuesday nights. The steady hum of the air conditioning and the lingering scent of hair products had always been oddly comforting. But something about that envelope made the familiar space feel different. Wrong. Inside were photos. High-quality ones, taken with a good camera by someone who knew what they were doing. The first showed my husband Jack sitting at a cafe I didn't recognize, his hand resting on top of someone else's. The second made my stomach lurch. It was Sadie, my daughter-in-law, her fingers intertwined with his, both of them leaning in close like they were sharing secrets. The timestamp showed last Thursday. The day Jack said he was meeting clients in Phoenix. The day Sadie told Ethan she had an art gallery meeting. My phone buzzed, making me jump. A text from Ethan. "Mom, you coming to dinner Sunday?" Sadie's making her famous lasagna. I stared at my son's message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. How do you respond normally when your world is cracking apart? When you're looking at proof that your husband of 28 years is having an affair with your son's wife? Wouldn't miss it. I typed back, then set my phone face down on the counter. More photos spilled out. Jack and Sadie walking together in what looked like a park. Entering a hotel. My hands started shaking so badly I had to sit down. The salon phone rang, startling me again. I checked the caller ID. Emily, my best friend and voice of reason for the past 2 decades. "Hey, you still doing the books?" she asked. "Want to grab a late dinner?" I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing came out except a strange, choked sound. "Evie, what's wrong?" I looked down at the photos scattered across my desk. "Can you come to the salon? I just need you to see something." "Give me 15 minutes, she said, no questions asked. That's why I loved Emily. While I waited, I tried to make sense of it all. Jack had been distant lately, sure, but I'd chalked it up to work stress. And Sadie, sweet, artistic Sadie who'd made Ethan happier than I'd ever seen him. She'd been calling me more often, asking for advice about marriage and family. Was she trying to ease her guilt? Or playing some deeper game? The bell above the door chimed as Emily walked in. One look at my face and she locked the door behind her, flipping the sign to closed. "Show me," she said. I handed her the envelope. Watched her face as she went through the photos, her expression shifting from confusion to shock to anger. "That son of a bitch," she whispered. "Both of them. How long have you known?" "About 20 minutes. I laughed, but it sounded hollow. "The worst part? Sunday dinner. I'm supposed to go watch my son kiss the woman who's sleeping with his father. Watch him tell her he loves her while she pretends to be the perfect wife." Emily set the photos down carefully like they might bite. "What are you going to do?" I looked at the last photo in the stack. Jack and Sadie leaving the hotel, his hand on the small of her back. So casual, so comfortable. Like they'd done it 100 times before. "I don't know," I said. "But I can't let Ethan walk into Sunday dinner blind. I can't watch them destroy my son." "We'll figure it out," Emily said, pulling up a chair beside me. "But first you need a drink. A strong one." As she reached for her purse, another envelope slipped from between the photos, smaller than the first. Inside was a single note. "This is just the beginning. More proof to come." I had no idea who sent these photos or why, but one thing was certain. My quiet life running a salon and playing happy families was over. And maybe that wasn't entirely a bad thing. Emily stayed with me until midnight, plotting and planning over a bottle of wine. By the time I got home, Jack was already in bed, his soft snores echoing down the hallway. I stood in the doorway, watching him sleep, wondering how many nights I'd done this same thing, completely blind to who he really was. The next morning brought a new kind of hell, pretending everything was normal. Jack kissed me goodbye like always, his cologne lingering in the air after he left. The same cologne I'd smelled on Sadie last week, when she stopped by the salon for a trim. The memory made me gag. "You're distracted today," Maria, one of my stylists, said as I nearly poured color developer into the wrong bowl. "Everything okay?" "Just tired," I lied, forcing a smile. "Had a late night doing the books." My phone buzzed. A text from Sadie. "Hey Mom, can we grab coffee? Need your advice on something." The casual mom hit me like a slap. I'd loved hearing her call me that, had been so grateful that Ethan found someone who wanted to be part of our family. Now each letter felt like poison. "Sure, sweetie. Lunch break at 1. We met at the little cafe across from my salon. Sadie was already there, fidgeting with her wedding ring. Ethan's grandmother's ring. My mother-in-law's ring. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "I've been wanting to talk to you about Ethan." I took a slow sip of water, studying her face. She looked tired, nervous. "Good. Is everything okay?" I asked, proud of how steady my voice sounded. "He's been working so much lately. The startup's taking all his time, and She paused, twisting the ring again. "I feel like we're drifting apart." The irony almost made me laugh. "Almost. Marriage takes work," I said carefully. "Communication is key. No secrets." Sadie's hand jerked, knocking over her water glass. Ice cubes scattered across the table as she scrambled for napkins. "I'm so clumsy lately," she muttered, her cheeks flushing. I don't know who to talk to about this stuff. You and Jack have such a strong marriage. How do you do it?" I helped her mop up the water, buying time to control my expression. "Trust," I said finally. "Without trust, you have nothing." Her phone chimed. She glanced at it, and for a split second, I saw panic flash across her face before she quickly turned it face down. "Everything okay?" I asked innocently. "Oh, just work stuff." She grabbed her purse. "I should actually get going. Gallery meeting. Thanks for listening, Mom." I watched her hurry away, nearly colliding with a waiter in her haste. Emily's words from last night echoed in my head. We need proof. Real proof, not just photos from some anonymous source. Back at the salon, I called the number Emily had given me. A private investigator named Marcus answered on the second ring. Mrs. Harper? Emily told me you might call. Let's talk about what you need. As I explained the situation, Jack texted. Working late tonight. Don't wait up. One more thing, I told Marcus. I need you to track my husband's movements tonight. He says he's working late. We'll start immediately, Marcus said. And Mrs. Harper? Based on what you've told me, I suggest we also look into your husband's financial records. These situations often have a money trail. After hanging up, I stared at my reflection in the salon mirror. The woman looking back at me seemed different somehow. Harder, more determined. My phone buzzed again with another text from Jack. Love you. 3 weeks ago, that message would have made me smile. Now it just made me wonder how many other women he'd sent those same words to. How many times he'd said them to Sadie while Ethan was working late, building their future, trusting them both. The bell above the door chimed and Ethan walked in. My heart stopped. Hey, Mom, he said, grinning. Got time for a quick trim? And maybe some advice? I'm thinking about surprising Sadie with something big. Marcus's report arrived in my email at 3 a.m., jolting me awake with its quiet ping. I'd been sleeping on the couch lately, claiming back pain. Really, I just couldn't stand lying next to Jack, pretending I didn't know. The PDF opened to reveal page after page of financial records, photos, and text messages. My hands started shaking when I saw the numbers. Jack had been moving money around, draining accounts I didn't even know existed. Our retirement fund was almost empty. You need to see this, I texted Emily. Now! She called immediately. I'm coming over. Make coffee. While I waited, I scrolled through the surveillance photos. Jack hadn't been working late. He'd been meeting with someone named Lucas Reed at various hotels and restaurants. But here's where it got interesting. In half the photos, he was with Sadie. In the other half, Sadie was with Lucas alone. The doorbell rang just as I reached the section about Lucas. Emily didn't even take off her coat before grabbing my laptop. Holy shit, she whispered, scanning the report. Sadie's not just sleeping with Jack. She's sleeping with this Lucas guy too. And Jack knows about it. It gets better, I said, pointing to a bank statement. Look where the money's going. Emily's eyes widened. Anatskafere. In Lucas Name. Sadie's big break into the art world. I laughed, but it came out more like a sob. They're using my retirement money to fund her career and her lover's business. Does Ethan know anything about this gallery? He thinks it's just where Sadie works. He's so proud of her for making connections in the art world. I grabbed my coffee cup too hard, nearly cracking it. He's planning to surprise her with a trip to Paris. For their anniversary. Emily was still scrolling. Wait, there's more. Look at these messages between Jack and Lucas. The texts revealed a scheme so twisted it took my breath away. Lucas was blackmailing both Jack and Sadie, threatening to expose their affair to Ethan. Jack was embezzling money from his clients to pay him off, using the gallery as a front for laundering the funds. This isn't just an affair, Emily said quietly. This is criminal. My phone buzzed, Ethan calling. I let it go to voicemail, unable to trust my voice. You have to tell him, Emily said, before he invests more money in their future. Tell him what? That his father and his wife are both cheating on him? That they're involved in fraud? That everything he believes about his family is a lie? My voice cracked. Itelel destroyim. Better he hears it from you than the police. A key turned in the front door. Jack. Emily and I froze as his footsteps approached the kitchen. Evie, why are you up so? He stopped short, seeing Emily and the laptop. Something in our faces must have given us away, because he went pale. What's going on? I turned the laptop toward him, showing a photo of him leaving a hotel with Sadie. You tell me. I can explain, he started, but I cut him off. Can you explain the missing retirement fund too? Or the money laundering? Or why you're letting our daughter-in-law sleep with both you and her gallery partner? He sank into a chair, suddenly looking every bit of his 50 years. It's complicated. Actually, it's very simple, I said, surprised by how calm I felt. You're going to call Sadie right now. Tell her to come over. We're going to have a family meeting. Evie, please. Or I can call Ethan first. Your choice. Jack pulled out his phone with shaking hands. As he dialed, another text came through on my phone, from an unknown number. Mrs. Harper, this is Lucas Reed. We should talk. I have a proposition that might interest you. I showed the message to Emily, who raised her eyebrows. Think he's trying to blackmail you too? No, I said, watching Jack's desperate attempt to reach Sadie. I think he's offering me a way to take them all down. For the first time since finding those photos, I felt something other than pain. Something that felt dangerously like hope. Or maybe it was revenge. At this point, I wasn't sure there was a difference. I met Lucas Reed at a coffee shop downtown, far from my usual haunts. He was younger than I expected, with the kind of smile that probably got him whatever he wanted. Today, it wasn't working. "Mrs. Harper," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. "Thank you for meeting me." "Cut the charm," I replied. "What's your proposition?" He placed a USB drive on the table. "Everything you need to take Jack down. Bank records, client lists, proof of fraud. Enough to put him away for a long time. And what do you want in return?" "Immunity." He leaned forward. "When this breaks, I want to be seen as the whistleblower, not the accomplice. And I want Sadie left out of it." I almost laughed. "You're sleeping with her, helping steal my money, and now you want to protect her? She's not who you think she is." He glanced around before continuing. Jack approached her first, threatened to ruin Ethan's company if she didn't help him. He needed someone with art world connections to make the gallery legitimate. My coffee turned bitter in my mouth. "And you? I own the gallery, but Jack owns me. I'm just trying to survive this." My phone buzzed, Ethan again. Third call today. Each ignored call felt like another betrayal. "Why should I believe you?" Lucas pulled out his phone, played a recording. Jack's voice filled the space between us, threatening and cold in a way I'd never heard before. "Either you keep Sadie in line, or I'll make sure your sister's rehab records become very public. Your choice, kid." My hands started shaking. "He's blackmailing both of you?" "Among others. Check the drive." "But Mrs. Harper." His confidence cracked slightly. "Be careful. Jack's desperate, and desperate men are dangerous." I left the coffee shop feeling like I was walking through fog. At the salon, Emily was waiting with Marcus, our PI. "You met with Reed?" Marcus asked sharply. "That was risky. Look at what he gave me." I plugged in the USB drive. Files populated the screen, hundreds of them. Client records, bank statements, emails. Jack hadn't just been stealing from us. He'd been running a sophisticated fraud scheme for years. "This is bigger than an affair," Emily said quietly. "This could destroy everything. The salon, Ethan's company." "Mom!" We all froze. Ethan stood in the doorway, looking confused. "What's going on? Why haven't you been answering my calls?" Before I could respond, my phone chimed with a text from Jack. "Where's the USB drive Lucas gave you? Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Ethan saw the message. "Dad? Lucas? What USB drive?" The moment stretched like glass about to break. I looked at my son, my brilliant, trusting son who still believed in happy endings, and made my decision. "Sit down, honey. There's something you need to know." "Actually," a new voice said, "there's nothing he needs to know right now." Jack stood in the doorway, Sadie beside him. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "Emily, Marcus, please give us some family time," Jack said smoothly, but I saw his hand tighten on Sadie's arm. "They're staying," I said, standing. "Everyone's staying. It's time for truth, Jack." "Mom, what's happening?" Ethan's voice cracked slightly. I reached for the USB drive, but Jack moved faster than I expected. Suddenly he had my wrist, his grip just tight enough to hurt. "Think carefully, Evie," he whispered. "Some truths destroy more than just marriages." Looking into his eyes, I finally saw what Lucas meant about desperate men. This wasn't just about affairs or money anymore. This was about survival. "Let go of my mom," Ethan said quietly, dangerously. The bell above the door chimed. We all turned to see Lucas walking in, holding another USB drive. "Sorry I'm late," he said. "But I thought you might want the backup copy, Mrs. Harper. The one I already sent to the FBI." Jack's grip loosened. In that moment, I saw our whole life together crumble, and felt nothing but relief. The FBI arrived within hours. I watched from behind my salon window as they led Jack away in handcuffs, his perfectly pressed suit wrinkled from the struggle. He'd tried to run. Of course he had. Ethan hadn't said a word since Lucas revealed everything. He just sat in my office chair, staring at the USB drive like it might explode. Sadie stood in the corner, tears streaming down her face, but I couldn't tell if they were real or just another performance. "I can explain," she whispered. "Ethan, please. Don't." His voice was ice. "Just don't." Emily brought coffee nobody would drink. Marcus talked with the FBI agents, explaining his investigation. And I waited, feeling strangely hollow, like everything inside me had been scooped out and replaced with static. "Mrs. Harper?" An agent approached. We need to discuss your salon's finances. It appears your husband used the business to. I know what he used it for. I cut in. Will I lose it? That depends on how much you can prove you didn't know. Sadie made a small, choked sound. I can help with that. I have records, dates when Jack first approached me. When he threatened Ethan's company if I didn't. Threatened? Ethan stood so quickly his chair crashed backward. What exactly did my father threaten? He said he'd destroy your startup. That he had evidence of financial irregularities he'd planted. I thought I was protecting you. Lucas stepped forward. She's telling the truth about that part. Jack was blackmailing half the art community. But Sadie, he hesitated. You didn't have to sleep with him. The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan walked out without looking back. Sadie crumpled to the floor, her carefully constructed world finally shattering. I need everyone out, I said quietly. Now. Emily tried to protest, but I shook my head. Please, just give me a minute. Once alone, I walked through my salon. 23 years of work. Every mirror, every chair, every bottle of product, I'd chosen them all. Built this place from nothing. And Jack had used it like his personal piggy bank, laundering money through fake appointments and non-existent services. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Check the safe in Jack's office. Code is your anniversary. I almost ignored it, but something made me drive to Jack's office building. His secretary let me in without question. News hadn't spread yet. The safe was behind a terrible painting of a golf course. Inside was a single envelope. Divorce papers already filled out. Dated 3 months ago. And a letter. Evie, when you find this, everything will have fallen apart. I'm sorry for what I've done to our family, but not sorry enough to stop. The money's gone. All of it. But I've left you something better, freedom. Sign the papers. Save yourself. Jack. My laugh sounded hysterical even to my own ears. He'd planned his own escape, right down to divorcing me before everything exploded. Protecting himself until the end. The secretary appeared in the doorway. Mrs. Harper? Your son is here. Ethan looked destroyed, older somehow. Mom, Sadie's gone. Left a note saying she's staying with Lucas until I decide what I want. What do you want? He picked up the divorce papers, scanned them. I want to go back to last week when my biggest problem was choosing between investors. When my family wasn't a lie. I touched his cheek, this man who'd once been my tiny boy. Not everything was a lie. Tell me what to do, Mom. Please. But I couldn't. Because in that moment, looking at Jack's perfectly prepared escape plan, I realized something. Revenge wasn't what I needed. Neither was justice, really. What I needed was to rebuild. Myself, my business, my relationship with my son. We start over, I said finally. Together. And we do it right this time. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Lucas. There's more you need to know. Meet tonight? I deleted it without responding. Whatever game he was playing, whatever secrets were still hidden, they could wait. Right now, my son needed me. And for the first time in weeks, I knew exactly what to do. I visited Jack in jail a week after his arrest. The orange jumpsuit made him look smaller, older. Gone was the confident financial advisor who'd charmed clients with his easy smile. In his place sat a stranger with hollow eyes. Why did you want to see me? He asked through the glass. The FBI found more accounts, I said. Hidden ones. In the Caymans. He didn't react. Just studied my face like he was trying to memorize it. You look tired, Evie. The salon's being audited. They're questioning every transaction for the past 5 years. I might lose everything. You won't. He leaned forward. Check the storage unit on 5th. Box 247. The keys in my golf bag inside the 9-iron grip. I almost got up and left. More secrets, more breadcrumbs leading to God knows what. But I stayed, watching my husband of 28 years fidget with his handcuffs. Sadie's pregnant, I said. His face went white. Is it? She doesn't know. Could be yours, could be Lucas's. Could even be Ethan's. I pressed my hand against the glass. Our grandchild might never know which man is their grandfather. Jack's composure cracked. He started to cry, ugly, racking sobs that drew stares from the guards. I should have felt satisfaction. Instead, I just felt empty. Later, at the storage facility, I found the box. Inside was a laptop and a letter from Lucas to Sadie, dated months ago. My darling, Jack's getting suspicious. He knows about us, about the real reason for the gallery. We need to move faster. Once the money's transferred, we'll have enough to disappear. Just keep playing your part a little longer. All my love. My phone rang. Emily. Turn on the news. Now. I rushed to my car, flipped on the radio. Lucas Reed had been found dead in his gallery. Apparent suicide. Note confessing to everything, absolving Jack of all wrongdoing. My hands shook as I called Ethan. Voicemail. I tried Sadie next. Nothing. At home, I found Ethan sitting in the dark kitchen. She's gone, he said. Took everything. Even Mom's jewelry you were saving for my wife. Ethan. Lucas didn't kill himself, did he? His voice was eerily calm. Dad arranged it. And Sadie knew it was coming. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Storage unit was a trap. Laptops tracked. FBI en route. Hope you didn't touch it. S. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. They're coming for you now, Ethan said, still unnaturally calm. Dad's last move. Set you up to take the fall. The faithful wife who knew everything, helped launder the money through her salon. How do you know all this? He pulled out his phone, showed me texts between him and Sadie. It's done. Your mom found the laptop. By tomorrow, she'll be in custody and you'll be free. I'm sorry, baby. Your dad said it was the only way. My own son, my baby boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, had helped them destroy me. Why? I whispered. Because Dad promised to fix everything. My company, Sadie's Gallery, all of it. Said you were the only one who could take the fall without serving serious time. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. The sirens were right outside now. Red and blue lights painted my kitchen in alternating waves of color. Like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Mrs. Harper? A voice called through the door. FBI. We have a warrant. Ethan stood, finally looking at me. I'll tell them everything. Make it right. No, I said, surprising myself. You won't. Because in that moment, watching my son wrestle with his betrayal, I realized something. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't even about justice. It was about protection. And sometimes, protecting the ones you love means letting them live with their choices. I opened the door to face the FBI, my head held high. Behind me, I heard Ethan start to cry, just like his father had in jail. Like father, like son. Some things, it seems, run in the family. 3 months into my house arrest, Sadie showed up on my doorstep. The ankle monitor felt heavier as I watched her stand there, one hand protectively over her growing belly. Emily said you might shoot me if I came, she said quietly. Emily exaggerates. I stepped aside. But I did consider it. She looked different, haunted maybe. The confident artist was gone, replaced by someone who jumped at the sound of my kettle whistling. Lucas didn't kill himself, she said, sitting at my kitchen table. The same table where Ethan had betrayed me. Jack had him killed. I have proof. I set 2 mugs down harder than necessary. Why now? Because I'm tired of running. Because this baby deserves better than a life built on lies. She pulled out her phone, played a video. Lucas, alive, speaking directly to the camera. If you're watching this, I'm dead. Jack Harper arranged it through his contacts. The suicide note's a fake. The real money's not in the Caymans, it's in Switzerland, under his wife's maiden name. He's been planning this for years. Sadie, I'm sorry. I really did love you. My hands shook as I processed what this meant. The FBI already cleared Jack. He's being released next week. I know. He's already contacted Ethan, promising to restore everything once he's out. She looked up, tears streaming. But Ethan doesn't know what his father really is. What he made me do. A key turned in the front door. Ethan walked in, freezing when he saw us. Mom, what's she doing here? Showing me the truth, I said. Finally. His face hardened. You can't trust her. She's trying to manipulate you like always. Like you did. I stood, anger rising. Setting me up with that laptop? Letting your father destroy my life to save your company. There's always a choice, Sadie whispered. She played the video again. Ethan's face went from anger to confusion to horror. No, Dad wouldn't. He couldn't. He did, I said. And now he's coming home, expecting everything to go back to normal. Planning to use my identity to access millions I didn't even know existed. My phone buzzed Jack's lawyer. Release scheduled for tomorrow morning. Client requests family presence. Ethan sank into a chair. What do we do? We. I laughed bitterly. There is no we. You chose your side. Mom, please. I can fix this. Actually, Sadie said. We all can. She pulled out another phone, Lucas's. Everything's here. Every transaction, every threat, every murder Jack arranged. Lucas kept records of everything. Why didn't you turn this in before? Because Jack said he'd kill the baby if I did. But now. She touched her stomach. Now I realize this child deserves to know at least one of their possible fathers was brave enough to stand up to him. My ankle monitor beeped, a warning that I was getting too close to the door. Such a simple sound, representing everything Jack had taken from me. If we do this, I said slowly, we do it my way. No more secrets, no more schemes. And you both have to live with the consequences. They nodded, looking young and scared and finally honest. My phone buzzed again. Emily. Jack's lawyer filed early release papers. He'll be out in 3 hours. I looked at my son, at the woman carrying my grandchild, at the evidence that could destroy the man who'd tried to destroy me. 28 years of marriage, of trust and love and lies, all coming down to this moment. Call Marcus, I told Ethan. Tell him to meet us at the FBI office. Sadie, forward everything to Emily. She'll know what to do if anything happens to us. What are you going to do? Ethan asked. I touched my ankle monitor, thinking of Jack in his prison jumpsuit, looking small and old. I'm going to show your father what real revenge looks like. And then I'm going to make sure he never hurts our family again. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone. Sometimes it's about protecting what's left of the people you love, even if they've broken your heart. 1 year later, I stood in my newly renovated salon, watching Emily arrange flowers for the grand reopening. The ankle monitor was long gone, replaced by a quiet confidence I'd never known I had. Jack got 20 years. The evidence on Lucas's phone had been irrefutable: money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder, fraud. His lawyer tried claiming diminished capacity, but the jury hadn't bought it. I sat through every day of the trial, watching the man I'd loved for nearly 3 decades transform into a stranger in an orange jumpsuit. The first customers arrive in an hour, Emily said, adjusting a lily. You ready? Before I could answer, the bell chimed. Sadie walked in, pushing a stroller. My granddaughter, Grace, slept peacefully inside, her tiny fist clutching a stuffed rabbit. Sorry we're early, Sadie said. Ethan's parking the car. I bent down to kiss Grace's forehead, breathing in that perfect baby smell. DNA tests had confirmed what we'd all suspected: she was Ethan's. Some might call it a miracle, but I just called it justice. The new sign looks amazing, Ethan said, walking in. He'd lost the startup CEO polish, looked more like himself now. Harper & Son Beauty Company has a nice ring to it. It did. Using the recovered money from Jack's Swiss accounts, we'd rebuilt the salon together. Ethan handled the business side while I focused on what I did best: making people feel beautiful, inside and out. Mrs. Harper? Maria, my longest-serving stylist, called from the back. There's a letter for you. The envelope was cream-colored, expensive. Inside was a single sheet of paper, Jack's precise handwriting unchanged by prison. Evie, I heard about Grace. About the salon. About everything. You won fair and square. I just wanted you to know. I really did love you. Still do. Some lies are built on truth. Gee. I folded the letter carefully, tucked it into my appointment book without responding. Some truths don't need acknowledgement. Mom! Ethan touched my shoulder. You okay? Better than okay, I said and meant it. Where's that champagne Emily's been hiding? We gathered around the front desk, Emily, Ethan, Sadie, the entire salon staff. Grace woke up just in time, her eyes so much like her father's it made my heart ache. To new beginnings, Emily toasted. And old wisdom. I added, thinking of that first envelope of photos, the anonymous tip that had started it all. Later, after the successful reopening, I found another envelope in my office. Inside was a familiar-looking photo of Jack and Sadie at that cafe, but this time I noticed something in the background. A reflection in the window. Lucas taking the picture. Playing all sides until the very end. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Thought you should have the whole set. Sorry it took so long to make things right. Elle's sister. I smiled, remembering Lucas's final gift. The evidence that had saved my family, delivered through the one person he'd truly wanted to protect. His sister, the real owner of the gallery, who'd been quietly documenting everything. Ready to go? Ethan called. Grace wants her bedtime story from Grandma. I locked the photo away with Jack's letter. Some stories don't need to be told, at least not yet. Maybe someday, when Grace is older, she'll ask about the grandfather she never met, about the woman her mother used to be, about the way families can break and heal and transform. But for now, I just wanted to hold my granddaughter, to watch my son and his wife rebuild their marriage one day at a time, to run my fingers through fresh-cut hair and listen to the gentle hum of blow dryers and conversation. Because revenge isn't always about destroying what hurt you. Sometimes it's about building something better from the ruins. Sometimes it's about choosing love over anger, forgiveness over punishment. Not because it's easy, but because it's the only way to truly move forward. I turned off the salon lights, watching the new sign glow in the darkness. Harper & Son Beauty Company, a testament to what we'd lost, what we'd found, and what we'd built from the ashes of betrayal. Some beautiful things, it turns out, can only be created after everything falls apart. I never expected to find the letter that would change everything. It was tucked away in Helen's old jewelry box, the one she always kept on her bedside table before the stroke. The paper was crisp, formal-looking, and definitely not meant for my eyes. My name is Maggie, and until that moment, I thought I was doing a pretty good job balancing my roles as a high school French teacher and caregiver to my mother-in-law. Well, almost mother-in-law. Ethan and I weren't married, but after 2 years of living together with his kids, it felt like we were family. I probably shouldn't have been going through Helen's things, but she'd been asking about her pearl necklace all week. Even with her limited speech, she kept pointing to her neck and making distressed sounds. I figured finding it might bring her some comfort. Instead, I found something else entirely. "Dear Mr. Davidson," the letter began. I recognized the law firm's letterhead immediately, the same one that handled Helen's estate planning. As per Mrs. Helen Miller's instructions, we are preparing the necessary documentation to transfer ownership of the family home and associated properties to Miss Margaret Callahan upon. My hands started shaking. I had to sit down on Helen's bed to finish reading. "Everything okay up there?" Ethan called from downstairs. "Mom needs her medication soon." "Just a minute." I folded the letter quickly, my heart racing. Still looking for the pearls. The letter was dated 3 months before Helen's stroke. Before everything changed. Before Ethan started making plans to sell the house and move us all into something more suitable for our future. I glanced at Helen, dozing in her wheelchair by the window. Had she known this was coming? Was this why she'd been so insistent about the jewelry box? "Maggie!" Ethan's footsteps on the stairs. I shoved the letter into my pocket just as he appeared in the doorway, looking every bit the successful civil engineer in his crisp button-down shirt. "The realtor's coming by tomorrow. We should start clearing out some of Mom's old stuff." "Already?" I tried to keep my voice steady. "Don't you think it's a bit soon?" He gave me that patient smile I'd started to hate. "The market's hot right now. Besides, Mom doesn't need all this space anymore. The new house will be much better suited for everyone." Everyone except Helen, I thought. She loved this house. 45 years of memories lived in these walls. "Found them." I pulled out the pearl necklace, forcing a smile. Right where they always were. That night, I couldn't sleep. The letter burned in my pocket like a live coal. Beside me, Ethan snored peacefully, probably dreaming about the luxury home he'd been eyeing in the new development across town. Downstairs, I could hear Jake's video games despite it being well past midnight. Olivia's light was still on too. She'd been staying up later and later, growing more distant by the day. I slipped out of bed and went to check on Helen. She was awake, her eyes following me as I entered her room. "You knew, didn't you?" I whispered, sitting beside her. "About the letter?" She blinked slowly, deliberately. Her right hand twitched on the armrest. "Why me?" I asked, but I knew she couldn't answer. "Not anymore." A text lit up my phone. My mother, Barbara, checking in like she always did. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" I stared at the message, thinking about the letter, about Helen's trust in me, about Ethan's plans that suddenly felt more like betrayal than progress. The comfortable life I thought I had was unraveling, revealing something darker underneath. "Fine," I texted back. "Everything's fine." But nothing was fine. And as I sat there in the darkness, watching Helen drift back to sleep, I realized I had a choice to make. One that would either destroy this family or save it from itself. I just wasn't sure which yet. The realtor's heels clicked against the hardwood floors as she toured our home, Helen's home, with a tablet in hand and a practiced smile. I watched from the kitchen as Ethan guided her through each room, his voice animated in a way I rarely heard anymore. "The master suite has incredible potential," he was saying. With just a few updates. I gripped my coffee mug tighter, the letter from yesterday still burning a hole in my pocket. Helen sat beside me in her wheelchair, her eyes following the realtor's movement with an intensity that made me wonder how much she really understood. "Mom, did you take your pills?" Olivia breezed into the kitchen, already dressed for school in her field hockey uniform. She barely glanced at me as she grabbed a protein bar. I gave them to her an hour ago, I said, trying to catch her eye. Hey, I was thinking maybe we could. Dad, Olivia called out, cutting me off. Is it okay if I stay at Ashley's tonight? Her parents got a new pool. Ethan appeared in the doorway. Sure, sweetie. Just make sure your homework's done first. I felt my jaw tighten. Last week, when I'd suggested Olivia needed more structure with her studying, Ethan had dismissed my concerns. She's going through a lot, he'd said. We need to give her space. The realtor appeared behind him, tapping at her tablet. Mr. Miller, these comparables are very promising. With the current market, could we discuss this privately? I interrupted, standing up. Ethan, just for a minute? He gave me that look, the one that said I was being difficult. Can it wait? Mrs. Carson has another appointment. It's about Helen's wishes, I said firmly. The realtor tactfully stepped away, and Ethan followed me into the living room. Before I could speak, Jake thundered down the stairs, gaming headset still on. Dad, the Wi-Fi's acting up again. Can we get better internet at the new house? Later, bud, Ethan said, then turned to me. What's so urgent? I pulled out the letter, my hands trembling slightly. I found this yesterday. It's from Helen's lawyer. He barely glanced at it. More estate paperwork? The lawyer's already handled everything. No, this is different. Helen wants it. A crash from the kitchen interrupted us. We rushed back to find Helen's wheelchair tipped sideways, her breakfast spilled across the floor. She was making distressed sounds, trying to reach for something. I got it, Olivia said, already helping her grandmother up. God, who left their bag in the way? She could have been hurt. My bag. I dropped it when I went to make coffee. The guilt hit me hard, even as I moved to help. This is exactly why we need a more suitable house, Ethan said, running a hand through his hair. There's just not enough space here anymore. But that's not what Helen. Maggie, he cut me off, his voice low. I know you care about Mom, but this isn't up for discussion. The house is being sold. End of story. The realtor chose that moment to reappear. Mr. Miller? I have those contracts ready whenever you'd like to review them. I watched Ethan walk away, the letter still unread in my hand. Olivia had already disappeared upstairs, and Jake was back in his gaming world. Only Helen remained, her eyes fixed on me with an expression I couldn't quite read. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. Lunch today? I looked around at the family I'd tried so hard to be part of. At the mess on the floor, the realtor's calculating gaze, Ethan's dismissive back, and Helen's knowing eyes. Something shifted inside me, a quiet determination taking root. Yes, I texted back. We need to talk. Because now I understood, this wasn't just about a house or an inheritance. This was about power, about being heard, about standing up for what's right. And if Ethan wouldn't listen, well, Helen had given me the means to make him pay attention. I just had to figure out how to use it. The box of old papers nearly crushed my toes when it slipped from the attic shelf. I'd been searching through Helen's storage while everyone was out, hoping to find more evidence to support the letter, when a yellowed newspaper clipping fluttered to the floor. The headline made my blood run cold. Miller Construction under investigation, major safety violations alleged. I sank to the dusty attic floor, scanning the article dated 15 years ago. Ethan's father, Richard Miller, had allegedly covered up structural defects in several major projects. The case mysteriously disappeared before reaching court, but the article mentioned substantial payoffs and destroyed evidence. My phone buzzed, a text from Ethan. Where are you? The mortgage broker's waiting. I ignored it, my hands shaking as I dug deeper into the box. More articles, letters, and what looked like copies of canceled checks. Each piece painted a darker picture of the Miller family's past. Maggie! Jake's voice startled me. He stood at the attic entrance, gaming headset around his neck. Dad's getting mad. He says you're not answering your phone. I'll be right down. I stuffed the article into my pocket alongside Helen's inheritance letter. Just cleaning up some old things. Jake lingered, shifting uncomfortably. Hey, about yesterday. I didn't mean to be a jerk about the Wi-Fi thing. It's okay. Dad says once we move, everything will be better. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Like we'll be a real family again. The words hit like a punch to the gut. Before I could respond, Olivia's voice carried up the stairs. Jake! Dad needs us downstairs. The broker wants to meet the whole family. I followed them down, my mind racing. In the living room, Ethan stood with a well-dressed man, both examining papers spread across the coffee table. Helen sat in her usual spot by the window, but something about her expression seemed different, more alert, almost warning. There you are, Ethan said, his smile not reaching his eyes. We're just finalizing the sale details. The broker needs all resident signatures. Resident signaturas. I echoed. The broker nodded. Yes, anyone currently living in the property needs to sign off. I cannot olosif. My fingers brushed the newspaper article in my pocket. Actually, I need to discuss something with Ethan first. In private. Not now, Maggie, Ethan said through clenched teeth. Yes, now. Itarn to the broker. Could you give us a moment? Once he stepped out, Ethan rounded on me. What are you doing? This is a crucial meeting. Did you know about your father's scandal? I pulled out the article. About the construction cover-ups? The color drained from his face. His eyes darted to Helen, then back to me. Where did you get that? Does it matter? Is this why you're so desperate to sell? To move somewhere new and pretend none of this happened? You don't understand, he hissed. My father worked his entire life to build this company. I've spent years rebuilding our reputation. By selling Helen's house? The house she specifically left to me. The room went silent. Olivia and Jake stared at us, wide-eyed. Helen's hand twitched on her armrest. What do you mean, left to you? Olivia asked. I pulled out the inheritance letter. Your grandmother made arrangements before her stroke. She wanted. Enough. Ethan snatched both papers from my hands. Kids, go upstairs. Now. But Dad. Now. After they left, Ethan's voice was dangerously quiet. You had no right to go digging through our past. No right to question my decisions for this family. Your decisions? I laughed bitterly. What about Helen's decisions? What about what she wanted? What she wanted doesn't matter anymore. She's not capable of making those choices now. Behind him, Helen's hand moved deliberately to her throat, where her pearl necklace lay. Our eyes met, and in that moment I understood. She hadn't just left me the house. She'd left me the truth. You're wrong, I said, straightening my spine. She's more capable than you think. And so am I. I walked out of the room, leaving Ethan with his crumpled papers and his secrets. Because now I had something more valuable than an inheritance. I had leverage. And I intended to use it. The silence in my mother's kitchen felt heavier than usual. Barbara watched me over her coffee cup as I paced, the morning's events still churning in my stomach. He's selling the house anyway, I said, stopping at the window. The broker's probably there right now, papers all ready to sign. Without your signature? Barbara set her cup down. From what you've told me about that letter, he can't do that. He'll find a way. My phone buzzed again. Another missed call from Ethan. He always does. A car pulled into the driveway, Mrs. Thompson's silver Mercedes. Perfect. Just what I needed. The woman who'd introduced me to Ethan 2 years ago, probably here to remind me how lucky I was to have him. I invited her, Barbara said, reading my expression. There's something you need to hear. Mrs. Thompson bustled in, clutching her designer handbag like armor. Meggie, dear. You look terrible. Thanks, I muttered. Show her, Barbara urged. Mrs. Thompson's perfectly manicured hands shook slightly as she pulled out a folder. I should have told you this when I first introduced you to Ethan, but, well, I thought things might be different this time. Inside were photographs, Ethan with different women, all similar to me in age and appearance. News clippings about property disputes, contested wills, allegations of fraud. He's done this before? My voice sounded distant, even to myself. 3 times, Mrs. Thompson said. Always with caregivers. Women who helped with his mother after Sarah, his wife, passed. None of them knew about Helen's real estate holdings until it was too late. My phone buzzed again. A text from Olivia. Where are you? Dad's acting weird and Jake won't come out of his room. The kids, I whispered. They don't know. They were younger then, Mrs. Thompson said. Each time, he'd move them before they could get too attached to anyone. The doorbell rang, making us all jump. Through the front window, I saw Ethan's car in the street. I'll handle this, Barbara stood, but I stopped her. No. It's time I did. Ethan's smile was strained when I opened the door. Maggie, we need to talk. The broker's waiting, and... He spotted Mrs. Thompson through the doorway, and his face hardened. What's she doing here? Showing me your greatest hits, I said, holding up the folder. Quite a pattern you've got going. He stepped closer, dropping his voice. Whatever she told you, it's not true. Like the construction scandal wasn't true? Like Helen's letter isn't true. The kids need stability, Maggie. A fresh start. You understand that, don't you? His tone was gentle, reasonable. The same voice he'd used to convince me to move in, to take care of Helen, to build a life with his family. No, I said. What they need is the truth. My phone buzzed again, Jake this time. Found something weird in Dad's office. Can you come home? Ethan saw the message over my shoulder. Something flashed in his eyes. Fear? The kids are off limits, he said quietly. Whatever you think you're doing, whatever revenge you're planning, leave them out of it. Like you left them out of your schemes? How many fresh starts have they had, Ethan? He grabbed my arm, not quite hard enough to hurt, but enough to make his point. Don't make this messier than it needs to be. Let go of her. Barbara appeared in the doorway, phone in hand. Or the police can hear about all your fresh starts. He released me, straightening his jacket. Think about what you're doing, Maggie. Think about the kids. That's all I could think about. After he left, I stared at Jake's message, my hands trembling. Whatever he'd found in Ethan's office, it was another piece of the puzzle. One that could either save us all or destroy everything. What are you going to do? Barbara asked. I grabbed my keys. I'm going to get the truth. All of it. And then I'm going to make sure those kids never need another fresh start again. Because sometimes I was learning, revenge isn't about getting even. Sometimes it's about making things right. My laptop screen glowed in the darkness of my mother's guest room, illuminating the faces of my new online French students. 3 sessions tonight, 2 tomorrow morning. Every extra dollar counted now. Merci beaucoup, Madame Callahan, a student said as our lesson ended. Same time next week? I nodded, forcing a smile. Next week. Would I even be here next week? Jake's discovery in Ethan's office haunted me. A hidden USB drive containing emails between Ethan and his father's old business partners, discussing contingency plans if their past dealings ever came to light. The same drive held detailed records of Helen's properties. Not just the house, but commercial buildings, land developments. A small fortune, all carefully hidden. My phone lit up with a text from Olivia. Dad's taking us to look at private schools tomorrow. Says we're definitely moving now. What's going on? Before I could respond, another message appeared, this one from an unknown number. Heard you're asking questions about Richard Miller's old projects. Meet tomorrow? Bring the USB. I switched off my phone, my hands shaking. Through the wall, I could hear Barbara talking to someone. Mrs. Thompson again, probably sharing more horror stories about Ethan's past. My laptop pinged, a new email from the online teaching platform. They wanted me to take on more students, maybe even develop a full curriculum. The money would be good. Enough to. A knock at the door made me jump. Maggie. It was Jake, his voice barely a whisper. Canuno comein. I opened the door to find him clutching his backpack, eyes red. Dad's acting weird. He's in his office shredding stuff, and he keeps making phone calls. Does he know you're here? Jake shook his head. I told him I was staying at Matt's. But I found something else, something worse than the USB. He pulled out a manila envelope. Inside were medical records, Helen's tests from before her stroke, and a prescription bottle with a label I didn't recognize. I Googled the medication, Jake said. It's not what they told us she was taking. And look at the dates. The prescription was filled 2 days before Helen's stroke. My blood ran cold as I remembered Ethan's insistence on handling all of Helen's medications himself. Jake, this is serious. We need to. My phone buzzed again. Ethan, where's Jake? Not at Matt's. Bring him home now. He can't make us go back, Jake said, but his voice trembled. Right. I looked at this kid, this brave, terrified kid who'd figured out more than any 13-year-old should have to. At my laptop with its promise of escape. At the medical records that could destroy everything Ethan had built. Pack your things, I said. You're staying here tonight. Tomorrow we're getting your sister. And Helen. Her too. I opened my laptop again, but not to the teaching platform. Instead, I pulled up my email and started typing. To Helen's lawyer, to the police, to everyone who needed to know the truth. Another text from the unknown number. Time's running out. The evidence won't stay buried forever. They were right. But maybe that was the point. Maybe some things needed to see the light of day, no matter how ugly the truth might be. I heard Barbara's voice again, clearer now. She was on the phone with someone. Yes, officer. We have documentation of everything. Jake looked at me, his father's determination in his eyes, but none of his father's cruelty. What do we do now? I closed my laptop. The time for hiding behind screens was over. Now, we fight back. But we do it the right way. Because revenge wasn't just about getting even anymore. It was about protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. And sometimes the best revenge is simply telling the truth, no matter who it hurts. Even if it hurts us all. The Miller house looked different in the rain. Darker. More threatening. I sat in my car, watching Ethan's silhouette move behind the living room curtains, the USB drive heavy in my pocket. My phone buzzed. Barbara. Police want statement now. Where are you? I switched it off. Jake was safe at my mother's house, but Olivia was still inside with Ethan. And Helen. God, Helen. The front door opened. Ethan stepped onto the porch, his face illuminated by a flash of lightning. I knew you'd come back. I got out of the car, clutching the envelope of medical records. Where's Olivia? Upstairs, packing. We're leaving tonight. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You've caused quite a mess, Maggie. But we can still fix this. Fix it? Like you fixed things with Helen. His expression hardened. You don't understand what you're dealing with. I understand enough. I pulled out the prescription bottle. This medication, it causes strokes in high doses. Convenient timing, wasn't it? Right before she could change her will. Dad! Olivia appeared in the doorway, her face pale. What's she talking about? Go back inside, sweetie. Maggie's just upset. Show her the USB, Ethan. I took a step forward. Show her what your father did. What you helped cover up. How many families lost their homes because of faulty construction? How many lives did you ruin? You're ruining lives right now. He grabbed my arm, harder than before. Everything I did was for them. For their future. Let go of her. Olivia's voice cracked. Dad, you're hurting her. She's lying to you, Olivia. She's trying to tear us apart. A car door slammed behind us. Mrs. Thompson emerged from her Mercedes, holding up her phone. It's all recorded, Ethan. Everything. The police are on their way. His grip tightened. You don't want to do this, Maggie. Think about the kids. Think about. A weak cry came from inside the house. Helen. Mom. Olivia rushed back inside. I tried to follow, but Ethan blocked the door. She's fine. She just needs her medication. The real medication? Or more of what you gave her before? His face twisted. You think you're so righteous? You're nothing. A substitute teacher playing house with a family that isn't yours. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Dad! Olivia screamed from inside. Grandma's not breathing. Everything happened at once. Ethan shoved past me, running inside. Mrs. Thompson was calling 911. And I froze. Because this wasn't revenge anymore. This was life and death. I found them in Helen's room. Ethan performing CPR while Olivia sobbed. Helen's eyes were open, fixed on me, trying to say something. Her hand moved to her neck, to the pearl necklace. The same gesture she'd made earlier. The necklace, I whispered. Olivia, get her necklace. Inside the clasp was a microchip, a recording device. Helen's insurance policy, hidden in plain sight all these months. Ethan saw it and lunged, but the police burst in before he could reach it. As they led him away, he kept shouting about family, about loyalty, about everything he'd sacrificed. The paramedics worked on Helen. Olivia clung to me, shaking. I heard everything. In his office. The calls. The plans. I should have said something sooner. This isn't your fault, I told her, but my voice was hollow. Because in trying to protect everyone, I'd nearly lost them all. Helen was being loaded onto a stretcher, her fate uncertain. Jake was traumatized. Olivia's world was shattered. And me? I stood in the wreckage of a family I'd tried to save, wondering if revenge was worth the cost. The rain kept falling, washing away everything except the truth. And sometimes I was learning, the truth hurts more than any lie. But at least it was real. At least it was ours. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough to build something new from the ashes of what we'd lost. The hospital waiting room felt like limbo. Helen was in surgery. Complications from the previous stroke, the doctors said. Jake slept curled up in a chair while Olivia paced, still wearing her rain-soaked clothes. My phone lit up. Unknown number. Evidence received. Coming to take statement. Hold position. That's when Ethan walked in, flanked by 2 officers. They'd let him come say goodbye before taking him to the station. His hands were cuffed in front of him, but he still carried himself like he owned the room. 5 minutes, one officer said. Olivia stopped pacing. Jake stirred but didn't wake. You won, Ethan said quietly. Congratulations. The recording, the documents, Helen's statement. You've destroyed everything. You destroyed it yourself. I stood, keeping my voice low. Every lie, every manipulation, every pill you gave Helen. I protected this family. Protected our legacy. Dur legacy. Olivia's voice cracked. Is that what you call drugging Grandma? Lying to us about Mom. Ethan's facade cracked. What are you talking about? I found Mom's letters. Olivia's hands shook as she pulled out her phone. The ones you hid. She knew about Grandpa's scandal. Was going to report it. Then she had that accident. The color drained from Ethan's face. Olivia, you don't understand. I understand everything now. She played a voice recording. Sarah Miller, Ethan's late wife, detailing her discoveries about the construction fraud. The recording was dated 2 days before her fatal car crash. Jake was awake now, watching with wide eyes. The necklace wasn't Helen's only insurance policy, I said. Sarah had one too. And Olivia found it. Ethan lunged forward, but the officers caught him. You turned my own children against me. No, Jake stood up. You did that yourself, Dad. We just finally saw it. A doctor appeared in the doorway. Miss Callahan? Mrs. Miller is asking for you. This isn't over, Ethan called as the officers led him away. That house, those properties, they belong to the Miller family. You're right, I said. They do belong to the Miller family. Just not your version of it. Helen was pale but alert in her hospital bed. Her right hand moved deliberately to her throat, where the pearl necklace used to be. The recording, she whispered, her voice stronger than I'd heard in months. You found it. You knew. All this time. She smiled weakly. Waited. For right person. Someone who'd protect them. Olivia and Jake appeared in the doorway, hesitant. Come, Helen beckoned. My real legacy. As they huddled around her bed, I felt the weight of everything shift. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't even about justice. It was about protection. About truth. About building something new from the ashes of what was lost. My phone buzzed again. Federal investigators want to meet. Multiple cases linked to Miller construction fraud. Victims seeking restitution. What happens now? Jake asked, his hand in his grandmother's. Heilens Eish met Mina. In them, I saw not the stroke victim Ethan had tried to silence, but the fierce matriarch who'd orchestrated her family's salvation. Now, I said, we rebuild. The right way. Because sometimes the greatest act of revenge isn't destroying something. It's creating something better in its place. Olivia took my hand, Jake held his sister's, and Helen watched us with tears in her eyes. A chain of trust and truth that no amount of lies could break. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. 6 months later, I stood in Helen's garden, watching Jake and Olivia plant new roses. The old house looked different now, brighter somehow, despite the autumn chill. The settlement money came through, Barbara said, joining me with 2 cups of coffee. The victims of the construction fraud? I nodded. Helen insisted on selling everything except this house. Said the money should go back to the families who lost their homes. Inside, Helen's voice carried through the open window as she guided her speech therapist through another session. Her recovery had surprised everyone, except maybe herself. My phone buzzed with a notification from my online teaching platform. The French curriculum I'd developed was gaining traction, providing a steady income that gave us all breathing room to heal. Did you see this? Olivia came over, holding up her phone. A news article showed Ethan in his prison jumpsuit, heading to court for another hearing. He's trying to appeal the sentence. Let him try, I said. The truth isn't going anywhere. Jake looked up from his roses. Mom's letters helped other people come forward. The detective said there might be more cases. Your mother would be proud of you both, I said. Standing up for the truth like that. Olivia's eyes welled up. I keep thinking about what she must have felt, discovering everything alone. At least we had each other. A car pulled into the driveway. Mrs. Thompson with more boxes of documents. The investigation was still expanding, uncovering years of corruption that went beyond just the Miller family. There's something else, Barbara said quietly. The prison requested a family visit. The kids froze. Helen appeared in the doorway, her face concerned but steady. We don't have to decide now, I said. Or ever. It's your choice. What about you? Jake asked. Will you come with us? If we go. The question hung in the air. 6 months ago, I'd wanted revenge. Had dreamed of seeing Ethan face justice for everything he'd done. But now, I'll be here, I said. Whatever you decide. That's what family does. Helen smiled, that knowing smile that had started everything with a pearl necklace and a hidden letter. Later that evening, as the kids did homework at the kitchen table and Helen dozed in her favorite chair, I found myself in the garden again. The roses wouldn't bloom until spring, but their roots were taking hold, growing stronger beneath the surface. My phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. More evidence found. Could affect appeal. Need your statement. I looked through the window at my unlikely family, not bound by blood or marriage, but by something stronger. By choice. By truth. By the kind of love that grows in the aftermath of storms. Coming, I texted back. because revenge hadn't given me what I wanted. Justice hadn't either, not completely. What had saved us was simpler than that: the courage to speak truth, to choose love over fear, to build something new from the ashes of what was lost. Olivia called from inside. "Maggie, can you help me with my French homework?" "Just a minute," I called back, taking one last look at the garden. The roses would bloom again. Different from before, maybe, but stronger for having been replanted. Just like us. I turned toward the warm light of home, leaving the shadows of the past where they belonged, behind us, fading in the growing dark. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying what hurt you. It's about growing something beautiful in its place, and watching it bloom.
I always thought bad news came through email these days. That's why when my phone rang at 9:47 a.m. on a Tuesday and I saw my boss's name on the screen, my stomach dropped. No one calls with good news anymore, especially not your boss. My name is Clara, and that call changed everything. "Clara, I need you to listen carefully," Richard said, his voice unusually tight. "The firm is declaring bankruptcy. Effective immediately. I'm so sorry, but we're letting everyone go." I gripped my desk, staring at the family photo of Derek and me from our vacation in Hawaii last year. This is a joke, right? I wish it were. The SEC is already here. Pack up your personal items and leave your security badge with reception. Again, I'm truly sorry. The line went dead before I could respond. Around me, similar conversations were happening. The usually bustling trading floor of Jensen & Mills investment firm turned into a scene of chaos and disbelief. My colleague Sarah was already crying at her desk, mascara running down her cheeks as she clutched her phone. I should have seen it coming. The signs were there: the nervous whispers, the closed-door meetings, the way our CEO had been dodging quarterly reviews. But I'd been too focused on proving myself, on living up to my parents' sacrifices for my education. Now here I was, boxing up 5 years of my life into a cardboard container meant for printer paper. My hands shook as I texted Derek. "Lost my job. Firm went bankrupt. Coming home early." 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared. Finally, damn. That sucks. I'm heading out to meet some clients. We'll talk tonight. Something about his response felt off, but I was too numb to analyze it. Derek had been meeting clients a lot lately, even though his real estate business wasn't doing great. I'd been carrying us financially for months, something he'd grown increasingly bitter about. As I walked to my car, clutching my sad little box of belongings, my mother's words from last week echoed in my head. "Clara, honey, something's not right with Derek." A woman knows these things. I dismissed her concerns then. Mom had always been overprotective since Dad passed, and Derek was just going through a rough patch. We all were. But now, with my career in shambles and our savings about to take a massive hit, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Derek's distant behavior than just wounded pride. My phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "Sorry about Jensen & Mills. Heard the news. Let's grab coffee and talk opportunities." V. I didn't know any V, and something about the timing felt strange. I clicked on the number, hoping for a contact photo, but there was none. Just another mystery to add to this disaster of a day. The drive home was a blur. I kept thinking about the mortgage, our plans to start a family next year, the renovation we'd just started on the kitchen. Everything we'd built was balanced on my income, on my stability. Derek's commission-based earnings weren't enough to keep us afloat. I pulled into our driveway at 10:30 a.m., hours before I'd normally be home. Derek's car was gone, even though his client meeting wasn't supposed to be until afternoon. Another detail that didn't quite fit. As I unlocked the front door, I noticed something else odd. The house smelled like perfume, not my usual vanilla scent, but something floral and expensive. And there, on the entryway table, was a woman's earring I'd never seen before. My mother's warning didn't seem so paranoid anymore. That earring haunted me for hours as I sat at our kitchen island, staring at it like it might suddenly confess all of Derek's secrets. I'd placed it dead center on the granite countertop, its crystal pendant catching the afternoon light. The house felt too quiet, too empty, like it was holding its breath. My phone buzzed again. "Mom, have you eaten anything today?" she asked before I could even say hello. "I'm not hungry." I picked up the earring, turning it over. "Mom, remember what you said about Derek last week?" "Oh, honey, what happened?" I told her everything: the firm's collapse, Derek's strange behavior, and finally the earring. She listened without interrupting, which told me exactly how worried she was. Mom always had opinions to share. "I'm coming over," she said finally. "No, don't. He'll be home soon to talk tonight like he promised." I tried to keep the bitterness out of my voice. "I need to handle this myself." "Clara Jensen, you don't have to handle everything yourself. That's what got you into this mess, always being the strong one, the responsible one, while Derek..." "Well, Derek what, Mom?" "Well, Derek coasts on your success and apparently can't keep his pants on." The truth of her words stung. I'd been making excuses for Derek's behavior for months. His networking events that ran late into the night. The mysterious charges on our joint credit card at restaurants I'd never heard of. The new cologne he'd started wearing. The front door clicked open. I quickly pocketed the earring. "Mom, I have to go." Derek walked in, looking surprised to see me. He was wearing a crisp blue button-down I didn't recognize, and that new cologne filled the air. "Hey, I thought we were talking tonight." "Surprise," I said flatly. "I thought maybe we could talk now, since you're clearly not with clients." He loosened his tie, avoiding my eyes. "I had a cancellation. Funny, because I had quite a day myself. Lost my job, found something interesting at home." I pulled out the earring. "Know anything about this?" Color drained from his face. For a moment, he looked like he might deny it, but then his expression hardened. "It's not what you think." "Really?" "'Cause I think another woman has been in our house. I think you've been lying to me. I think," my voice cracked, and I hated myself for it, "I think you're having an affair." "You want to talk about lies?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "How about how you've been making me feel like a failure for the past year? Always talking about your big promotion, your bonus, how you're carrying us financially." "That's not fair. I've only ever supported you." "Supported me? You've been suffocating me. And now you've lost everything, and you're trying to blame me for moving on?" The words hit like a physical blow. "Moving on? So you admit it?" His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and I caught a glimpse of the name, Vanessa. "That's her, isn't it? The mysterious V who texted me about job opportunities?" Pieces were falling into place. "How long, Derek?" 6 months, he said quietly. "She works in real estate too. She understands me." I thought about all those nights I'd worked late trying to secure our future. All the times I'd defended him to my mother. All the sacrifices I'd made for us. And he'd been with her the whole time. "Get out," I whispered. "Clara." "Get out." I grabbed the earring and threw it at him. Bounced off his chest and skittered across the floor. "Go to her. Go understand each other somewhere else." He hesitated, then turned and walked out. The door closed with a soft click that somehow hurt more than if he'd slammed it. My phone lit up with another text from that unknown number, from Vanessa. "I hope you understand. It's better this way." I stared at those words until they blurred, feeling something shift inside me. Understanding? Oh, they'd understand all right. They'd understand exactly what happens when you underestimate someone with nothing left to lose. I didn't mean to hack into Derek's phone. Not really. But when he came back the next morning to grab some things while I was supposedly at a job interview, he left his laptop open. The laptop I'd bought him last Christmas. The laptop that still had my saved passwords, including the one for our phone carrier's website. 6 months of text messages between him and Vanessa loaded onto my screen. My hands shook as I scrolled through their conversations, each message like a knife to the gut. Your wife's firm going under is the perfect opportunity, Vanessa had written just yesterday. Now to won't feel so. Financially inferior. Derek's response made me physically ill. Clara's always looked down on me. Time she learns what it feels like to lose everything. I was still staring at the screen when the front door opened. Derek walked in, stopping cold when he saw me at his laptop. "You're not supposed to be here," he said. Funny. I was just thinking the same about Vanessa last month in Cabo. I turned the screen toward him, showing a photo of them on a beach. Nice vacation. Did you use our joint credit card for that too? He's fesidarkened. You had no right. No right? I paid for everything. The mortgage, the bills, this laptop, your failing business. It's not failing. He slammed his hand on the desk, making me jump. Vanessa and I have big plans. We're merging our real estate businesses. I laughed, a hollow sound. Is that what you're calling it? You don't understand. You never understood. Always so focused on your precious career. While you focused on screwing your younger colleague? The words tasted bitter. Tell me, does Vanessa know about the 3 failed businesses before real estate? Or the gambling debt I paid off 2 years ago? His expression shifted from anger to something darker. You promised never to mention that. Yeah, well, you promised to be faithful. Guess we're both liars. He stepped closer, his cologne, her cologne choice I now realized, filling my nostrils. You want to play it this way? Fine. But remember, I know things too. Like how you fudged those investment reports last quarter. My blood ran cold. I never. Please. You think I didn't notice the late-night spreadsheet adjustments? The creative accounting you mentioned to your boss? He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Wonder what the SEC would think about that. You'd really try to destroy me? After everything? You destroyed yourself, Clara. I'm just making sure you know your place. The Derek I thought I knew vanished in that moment, replaced by this stranger wearing his face. I thought about the text messages, about Vanessa's smug certainty that I'd lose everything. Get out, I whispered. Gladly. But first, he pulled out his phone and showed me a screen recording of my carrier account login. Thanks for the evidence of cybercrime. That might come in handy during the divorce. He left me there, surrounded by the wreckage of our marriage and the realization that the man I'd loved had been planning my downfall while sleeping in our bed. My phone buzzed, another text from Vanessa. Heard you've been snooping. Not very professional. But then again, neither is cooking the books, right? Face blowing a kiss. I sat there for a long time, reading and rereading their messages. They thought they had me cornered. The failed businesswoman. The unemployed fraud. The stupid wife who never saw it coming. But they'd forgotten something crucial. I hadn't spent 5 years in investment banking without learning how to spot patterns, how to follow money trails, how to find secrets. I opened my laptop and created a new folder, Insurance. Then I started digging into Derek and Vanessa's real estate dealings. If they wanted to play dirty, they'd learn that sometimes the cornered prey is the most dangerous. My mother called again, but I let it go to voicemail. I couldn't talk now. I was too busy planning how to make them understand exactly what they'd unleashed. After 3 days of digging through real estate records and transaction histories, my eyes were burning, but I'd found something. Several somethings, actually. The kind of somethings that made Derek's threat about my accounting look like a parking ticket. My mother had been calling hourly. I finally answered on her 15th try. I'm selling the house, I said before she could start. I need somewhere to stay for a while. Of course you do, honey. But first, you need to shower and eat something that isn't coffee. I glanced at my reflection in the laptop screen. My hair was a mess, and I was still wearing the same clothes from 3 days ago. I'm fine. You're not fine. I'm coming over. 20 minutes later, she walked in with groceries and that look she gets when she's about to fix everything. She stopped short when she saw the papers spread across the dining room table. Clara, what is all this? Pointed to a stack of documents. Evidence. Derek and Vanessa have been running a real estate fraud scheme. They've been flipping properties through shell companies, inflating values, and I stopped at her blank expression. It's bad, Mom. Really bad. She set down the groceries. And what exactly do you plan to do with this information? I don't know, Tet. I did know, but I couldn't tell her. Couldn't admit how much I wanted them to hurt like I was hurting. She picked up one of the papers, frowning. This is dated 8 months ago. Before he started sleeping with her? Yeah. Turns out the affair wasn't the beginning of their partnership. The betrayal felt fresh all over again. They'd been planning this for over a year. My phone buzzed, another text from Vanessa. Dinner at Marino's tonight? Your favorite table. Don't worry, we'll take good care of your reservation. My hand shook as I showed Mom the message. Marino's was where Derek had proposed, where we'd celebrated every anniversary. Of course they'd go there. I have to sell the house, I repeated. They're trying to break me, and I can't. I can't stay here with all these memories. Mom sat beside me, pushing aside some papers. Clara, revenge won't fix this. This isn't about revenge. It's about survival. I pulled up an email on my laptop. The SEC is already investigating the firm's collapse. One anonymous tip about Derek and Vanessa's scheme would destroy them, she finished. And possibly you too. Have you thought about that? I had. I'd thought about nothing else for 3 days. They're already trying to destroy me. At least this way. At least this way what? You all go down together. She grabbed my hands. You're better than this. Am I? Because right now I feel like the stupid wife who didn't see what was happening right in front of her, who worked 60-hour weeks while her husband was building a new life with someone else. You're my daughter, she said firmly. And I didn't raise you to let anyone make you doubt yourself. My phone buzzed again. A photo this time. Derek and Vanessa at our table in Marino's, his hand on hers, both smiling at the camera. The caption read, "Making new memories, Red Heart." Mom saw my face and grabbed the phone before I could respond. Enough. Pack a bag. You're coming home with me. But the evidence. We'll still be here tomorrow. She started gathering the papers into a folder. Right now, you need distance. Perspective. I need justice, I whispered. Justice and revenge aren't the same thing, honey. She touched my cheek. And right now, you can't tell the difference. She was right, of course. But as I packed a bag, I copied all the evidence onto a USB drive. Just in case. 'Cause while Mom was right about revenge not fixing anything, she was wrong about one thing. I could absolutely tell the difference between justice and revenge. I wanted both. I wasn't supposed to be home when Derek came to get his things. That was the agreement. But agreements meant nothing anymore, which is why I was sitting in the kitchen when he walked in with Vanessa. They froze in the doorway, Derek's hands still on the small of her back. She was prettier in person than in photos, younger too. She wore a cream blazer that probably cost more than my first car. Clara, Derek said, recovering first. We thought you'd be at your mother's. Clearly. I gestured to the manila envelope on the counter. Don't worry, I was just leaving. But first, I have something for you both. Vanessa stepped forward, all confident smiles. Actually, we have something for you too. She pulled out a stack of papers. The divorce agreement. Derek's lawyer drafted it. I picked up my envelope instead. You might want to hold off on that. I slid out the documents I'd gathered, spreading them across the counter like playing cards. Interesting property portfolio you two have built. Lots of shell companies. Lots of creative financing. Color drained from Derek's face. Vanessa's smile flickered but held. What is this supposed to be? she asked, but her voice wavered. Insurance. I tapped one particular document. This one's my favorite. The Wilson property? The one you flipped 3 times through different shell companies to inflate the value? That's textbook fraud. Derek stepped forward, his face dark. You're bluffing. Am I? 'Cause I have copies of everything. Bank transfers, shell company registrations, all of it. Dating back to before you two even started sleeping together. I met Vanessa's eyes. He didn't tell you I was good with numbers, did he? Her perfect smile cracked. Derek, she's trying to manipulate us, he said, but sweat beaded on his forehead. Clara, think about what you're doing. I have 4 days. I stood up, gathering the documents. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tear up that divorce agreement and have your lawyer draft a new one. One that doesn't try to screw me out of everything I've earned. Vanessa laughed, but it sounded hollow. Or what? You'll turn us in? You'll go down too. Your firm. My firm's already down. I have nothing left to lose. I smiled and it felt dangerous. But you two? You have everything to lose. Derek moved suddenly, reaching for the documents, but I was faster. I stepped back, holding them against my chest. Don't, I warned. Copies are already with my lawyer. And the SEC's anonymous tip line is just 1 click away. You wouldn't, Derek said, but uncertainty crept into his voice. The wife you knew wouldn't. But she died the day you started screwing your business partner. Vanessa grabbed Derek's arm, her confident facade crumbling. We need to talk. Now. I watched them huddle in the corner, whispering furiously. Power dynamic had shifted, and we all knew it. When they finally turned back, Derek looked defeated. What do you want? He asked. Everything I'm entitled to. And one more thing. I pulled out my phone, showing them the photo they'd sent from Marino's. Stay away from our places. Make new memories somewhere else. They left without the divorce papers, Vanessa's heels clicking angrily on the hardwood. As the door closed, my hands started shaking. I sank into a chair, adrenaline giving way to nausea. My phone buzzed, Mom checking in. I ignored it, staring instead at the documents scattered across the counter. I had what I wanted, leverage, power, the upper hand. So why did victory taste so bitter? Because revenge wasn't supposed to feel this empty. 'Cause somewhere between discovering their scheme and using it against them, I'd become someone I didn't recognize. But as I gathered the documents, tucking them safely away, I realized something else. Sometimes becoming someone new isn't about choice. Sometimes it's about survival. And I intended to survive. The salon wasn't my idea. Mom practically dragged me there, insisting I needed a change. New look, new start, she said, as if a haircut could fix everything that was broken inside me. I hadn't planned on Linda Cooper changing my life. She was cutting my hair when Derek and Vanessa walked in. Course they did. Because the universe wasn't done punishing me yet. Clara. Linda's scissors paused mid-snip. You know them? I caught Derek's reflection in the mirror, watched him whisper something to Vanessa that made her laugh. They were putting on a show and I was the audience. Unfortunately, I managed. Linda must have seen something in my face because she stepped between me and the mirror, blocking my view. Want me to tell them we're fully booked? But Vanessa was already sashaying over, her perfect hair bouncing with each step. Clara! What a surprise. Love the new. Look! Her pause said everything about what she thought of my half-cut hair. Vanessa. My voice sounded hollow. Bit far from your usual salon, isn't it? Oh, Derek and I are looking at property in the area. For our new office. She smiled, all teeth. We're expanding. My hands gripped the armrests. The evidence I had on their fraud was my only leverage, but it felt heavier every day. The weight of knowing, of holding their fate, was exhausting. How nice for you both. Linda's voice could have frozen hell. "Now, if you'll excuse us." "Actually," Derek stepped forward, "we need to talk, Clara." "About the documents." "Nothing to talk about. I met it ice in the mirror." "Unless you're ready to sign the new agreement?" Vanessa's smile slipped. "We could ruin you too, you know. One anonymous tip about your creative accounting." "Ladies." Linda's voice cut through the tension. "This is a place of business. Take your drama elsewhere." But Vanessa wasn't finished. "A salon, Clara? Really? This is what the mighty investment banker has been reduced to." She leaned closer, dropping her voice. "You know what's sad? He never would have looked at me if you hadn't made him feel so inadequate." Something snapped inside me. I stood up, the cape falling to the floor, hair half finished. "You want the truth, Vanessa? He made himself feel inadequate. I supported him through 3 failed businesses, paid off his gambling debts, and kept his secrets. But sure, tell yourself whatever helps you sleep at night." "Clara," Derek started, but I cut him off. "You want those documents? Fine. I'll send everything to the SEC. Let them sort out who did what. Because I'm done protecting either of you." The salon had gone silent. Every client, every stylist was watching. Vanessa's face had lost its smug certainty, and Derek looked scared. "You wouldn't," he said, but his voice shook. "Try me." I grabbed my purse, hands trembling. "Now get out." They left, but not before Vanessa turned back. "This isn't over." "No," I agreed. "It's just beginning." The moment they were gone, my legs gave out. Linda caught me before I hit the floor, guiding me to a private room in the back. "Breathe," she said, holding my hands. "Just breathe." I can't do this anymore." The words tumbled out. The evidence, the threats, all of it. "I'm so tired." "Then stop fighting." Linda's voice was gentle but firm. "Let it go. If I do, they win." "No, honey. If you keep letting them control your life, they win." She squeezed my hands. "You want revenge? Build something better than what they destroyed. Show them what they lost." I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. Her salon, her success, her strength. "How?" My voice cracked. "Start by letting me finish your hair." She smiled. "Then we'll talk about that business degree of yours and how this place could use some financial expertise." I touched my half-finished hair, feeling something shift inside me. Maybe Mom was right. Maybe a new look could be a new start. But first, I had some documents to send to the SEC. The SEC investigation hit the local news on a Tuesday morning. By Wednesday afternoon, Derek and Vanessa's real estate empire was crumbling. I watched it unfold from behind the salon's reception desk, where I'd been helping Linda reorganize her business finances. I didn't expect them to show up together, but they did. This time, Vanessa wasn't smiling. "You vindictive bitch," she spat, storming toward the desk. "You ruined everything." Mrs. Peterson, our regular client getting her weekly blowout, lowered her magazine. "Watch your language, young lady. This is a respectable establishment." "Stay out of this, old woman." Derek's voice was cold. He turned to me. "We need to talk. Privately." "Nothing to talk about." I kept typing on the laptop, refusing to meet his eyes. "The SEC has everything they need." "Everything they need?" Vanessa laughed hysterically. "You mean everything you fabricated?" "Derek, tell her what your lawyer said." I finally looked up. "About what? The Wilson property? Or the shell companies? Or maybe about the offshore accounts?" Derek's face went pale. "How did you know about those?" "I didn't. Until now." I smiled, and it felt genuine for the first time in weeks. "Thanks for confirming them, though." Mrs. Peterson set down her magazine completely now, watching with undisguised interest. Other clients were pretending to read magazines while clearly eavesdropping. "You're bluffing," Vanessa said, but uncertainty crept into her voice. "Am I?" "Check your phone." They both pulled out their phones. I watched their faces as they saw the breaking news. Local real estate scandal deepens. Federal investigation uncovers offshore accounts. "This isn't possible," Derek whispered. "You taught me well, honey." I turned my laptop around, showing them the spreadsheets I'd been working on. But not about real estate fraud. About how to keep digging until you find the truth. "You'll go down too," Vanessa threatened, but her voice shook. "Your creative accounting was all documented and reported to the SEC weeks ago." Linda stepped forward, arms crossed. "Clara's been helping me clean up my books, making everything legitimate. Unlike some people." Mrs. Peterson stood up, her half-done hair forgotten. "I knew something was fishy about those property deals. My Harold, God rest his soul, always said that new development of yours seemed too good to be true." "Stay out of this," Derek snapped, but Mrs. Peterson wasn't finished. "You know what else Harold said? That Clara was too good for you. Guess he was right about that too." Other clients murmured in agreement. Derek looked around, suddenly aware of his audience, of how this would play in our small community. "This isn't over," he growled, grabbing Vanessa's arm. "Actually, it is." I stood up. "The SEC has everything. Police probably have questions about those offshore accounts. And your lawyer." I smiled. "He called me this morning. Seems he's cooperating to save himself." Vanessa jerked away from Derek. "You said we were protected." "You said." "He says a lot of things, doesn't he?" I interrupted. "Funny how none of them turn out to be true." They left separately, Vanessa practically running to her car while Derek stood outside, looking lost. For a moment, I saw the man I'd married, vulnerable, uncertain, human. Then he straightened his shoulders and walked away without looking back. The salon erupted in chatter. Mrs. Peterson patted my hand. "Good riddance to bad rubbish, dear." Linda squeezed my shoulder. "You okay?" I looked at the spreadsheets on my laptop. Legitimate business numbers for a legitimate business. No schemes, no fraud, just honest work and real growth. "Yeah," I said and meant it. "I really am." My phone buzzed, a text from Mom. "Saw the news." "Proud of you, honey." I smiled, thinking about how revenge had stopped being the point somewhere along the way. This wasn't about hurting them anymore. It was about choosing who I wanted to be. And I chose to be better. 1 year later, I stood in front of Clarity Beauty Academy's gleaming windows, watching the morning sun catch our new sign. Inside, Linda was training our first class of students, women rebuilding their lives just like I had. "Quite a change from investment banking," Mom said, joining me with 2 coffee cups. "Better change." I took 1 cup, breathing in the familiar scent of her morning brew. "The bank called again yesterday." She raised an eyebrow. "The consulting offer?" I nodded. The irony wasn't lost on me, being headhunted by the same industry I'd left behind. "They want me to help other businesses avoid what happened with Jensen and Mills. And I told them I'd consult part-time, around the academy's schedule." Mom smiled, the proud one she used to give me when I brought home straight A's. Before she could respond, Mrs. Peterson's distinctive voice carried from inside. "Clara, the reporter's here." The local business journal was doing a piece on successful women entrepreneurs. Linda had insisted I be interviewed too, even though the academy was barely 6 months old. "Coming." I turned to Mom. "Want to stick around?" "Actually, there's something you should see first." She pulled an envelope from her purse. "This came to the house yesterday." I recognized Derek's handwriting immediately. Postmark was from California, where he'd moved after taking a plea deal. Vanessa, last I heard, was in Florida trying to rebuild her own life. "I haven't opened it," Mom said quietly. "I know." I turned the envelope over, feeling its weight. You think I should? I think you're strong enough now to decide for yourself. Inside the salon, I could hear Linda teaching our students about business plans and financial management. Mrs. Peterson was probably adding her own colorful commentary. These women had become my family, my support system, my future. I opened the letter. Clara, I've written this letter 100 times in my head. Nothing sounds right. Nothing can fix what I broke. But you deserve to hear it anyway. I'm sorry. Not just for the affair or the fraud, but for making you doubt yourself. You were never the problem. I was. I'm getting help now. Therapy, Gamblers Anonymous, the works. Not asking for forgiveness. Just wanted you to know that losing you made me finally face myself. I saw the article about your academy online. You look happy. You look free. I'm glad. Derek. I folded the letter carefully, tucking it back into its envelope. You okay? Mom touched my arm. Yeah. I smiled, surprising myself by meaning it. I really am. The door chimed as Mrs. Peterson stuck her head out. Clara Jensen, if you don't get in here, I'm telling the reporter about the time you threatened to audit Derek's offshore accounts. That's not exactly how it happened, I laughed, but Mrs. Peterson was already heading back inside, regaling anyone who'd listen with her slightly embellished version of events. You know, Mom said, when you were little, you used to say you wanted to change the world. I looked through the window at our students, women learning not just about beauty, but about business, about independence, about second chances. Linda caught my eye and winked, pointing at her watch. Maybe I am, I said. Just not the way I expected. I tucked Derek's letter into my bag, next to the bank's consulting contract and our academy's expansion plans. Each piece of paper represented a different path. The past I'd survived, the future I was building, the choices that were finally truly mine. Ready! Mom held the door. I took one last look at our sign, Clarity Beauty Academy, where beauty meets business. Where my revenge had transformed into something better, purpose. Ready! The door chimed as we walked in together, and I felt that familiar surge of certainty. This was where I belonged. Not because life had forced me here, but because I'd chosen it. Chosen myself. And that was the sweetest revenge of all.